woman set up a camera at her husband's grave, but what she saw in the recording shocked her. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong after Mark's sudden death. At his funeral, she stood by his grave, lost in grief. But days later, strange things began happening. The soil looked disturbed, and flowers moved without reason. Desperate for answers, Sarah hid a camera near the grave. At first, the footage showed nothing unusual. Then, shadows appeared, and one night, a faint handprint formed on the headstone before vanishing. Sarah's grief turned into obsession. She searched through Mark's belongings and found receipts leading to an old cottage at the edge of town, a place connected to a secretive group. Determined, she went there hoping for answers, but what she saw there shocked her. Sarah's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel. The directions from the receipts she had found in Mark's drawer had led her down a narrow country road on the outskirts of town. The further she drove, the more the world around her seemed to vanish. Street lamps grew scarce, trees pressed in close, and the sound of her own breathing seemed louder in the silence of the night. Finally, she stopped. At the end of the lane stood a cottage. Its windows were cracked. The paint on the door had peeled away, and the roof sagged like it had been left to rot for years. A cold wind blew through the air, carrying the faint smell of damp earth. She sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the place. Part of her wanted to turn back, to forget the receipts and the grave, to leave everything buried. But another part of her couldn't. She needed answers. With a deep breath, she stepped out and pushed the door open. The hinges screeched, and the sound echoed through the still night. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floor groaned with every step. She lifted her torch and aimed it across the walls. Strange markings had been carved into the plaster, symbols she didn't recognize, looping and curling in unnatural shapes. Melted candles stood in a ring on the floor, their wax hardened long ago, as if whatever had happened here had ended suddenly and without warning. Her throat tightened. What was Mark doing connected to this place? She moved deeper into the room and spotted a pile of yellowed papers on a wooden table in the corner. She brushed away the dust and began to flip through them. At first they seemed meaningless, old bills, notes scribbled in a rushed hand. But then she froze. One page stood out. Her name was written across the top in Mark's handwriting. But as she read on, her stomach sank. It wasn't a letter to her, it was notes about her. Notes she didn't understand. He had been writing about secrets, about visits to this house, about people she didn't know. Her torch flickered, and for a moment she thought she heard something. A shuffle, faint but real, behind her. She turned quickly, her chest pounding. The doorway was darker than before, the night pressing in like a shadow given form. She took a step back, her hands trembling, the papers still in her grip. Then a figure appeared. A man stepped into the weak beam of the torch. His skin was pale, his hair untidy, his eyes red as if from sleepless nights. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She knew him. It was Daniel, Mark's old friend from years ago. She had met him once briefly, before he moved away. He had been close to Mark in college, before life had taken them down different paths. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel lowered his gaze, guilt written across his face. "I didn't mean for you to find me here," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence like a crack in glass. Sarah's heart raced. The images from the camera flooded back into her mind. The shadows, the soil disturbed, the flowers moving. It was him. He had been the one at Mark's grave. The handprint, the shifting earth, the things that had kept her awake night after night. It hadn't been a ghost or some force from beyond. It had been Daniel. Why? She whispered, her throat dry. He didn't answer at first. He stepped closer, his shoes crunching on broken plaster, and when he finally spoke, his words were heavy. "Mark reached out to me," he said, "not long before he died. He came here to this house. He was looking for something. Something he wouldn't talk about even to me. He said it was important. He said it was dangerous." Daniel's voice cracked as he continued. "When he died, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't let it go. I kept coming back here, and I kept going to his grave. It was the only way I felt close to him." Sarah's chest tightened with anger and confusion. She thought of all the nights she had sat awake, wondering if her husband was trying to reach her from beyond the grave, only to discover it was this man, this old friend. who had never let go. "You scared me," she said, her voice shaking. "You made me believe." Her words trailed off, unable to leave her lips. Daniel lowered his head. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I couldn't stop myself." Mark was searching for something, and I don't think he ever found it. I wanted to understand. I wanted to finish what he started. The torchlight flickered across the wall again, casting the strange symbols into view. Sarah clutched the papers tighter in her hand. "What is this place?" she asked. Daniel glanced around the room. "I don't know for sure," he admitted. "There were rumors in college. Mark told me once about a group that met in places like this. They believed they could find answers in old symbols, in rituals long forgotten. I thought it was just stories, but when he reached out when he came here before he died, I realized he had been serious. I don't know what he found. Maybe nothing. Maybe too much." The silence between them grew heavy. Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. She had chased shadows for weeks, believing her husband's death had left behind some impossible mystery. And now she stood in a crumbling house with nothing but scraps of paper and the confession of a broken man. Her anger faded, replaced by exhaustion. "So all of this," she whispered. "The grave, the camera, the handprint. It was just you." Daniel nodded slowly. His voice was barely audible. "It was just me. I didn't know how to let him go." Her heart ached. She wanted to scream, to demand answers. But what answers could he give? Mark was gone. The mystery she had built in her mind had no ghost, no hidden force, no final revelation. There was only grief, hers and Daniel's, twisted into something neither of them could control. For a long time they stood in silence, two people bound together by the loss of the same man. Finally, Sarah lowered the papers and let them fall to the floor. The dust rose up around them like smoke. She turned towards the door. Outside, the night air was cold, but it felt real in a way the house never could. She stood for a moment beneath the stars, breathing deeply, and realized that some questions would never be answered. Some secrets would never be revealed. Mark had lived a life she didn't fully know, and now it was over. No papers, no cameras, no hidden symbols could change that. Behind her, Daniel remained in the shadows, and she knew she would never see him again. As she walked back to her car, she felt the weight of the past pressing down on her, but she also felt a strange release. She had been chasing ghosts, but in the end there was only the reality of loss, and the ways people carried it differently. Sarah gripped the steering wheel once more, her eyes stinging with tears. She started the engine, and as the cottage disappeared in her rear-view mirror, she realized that some things are never meant to be fully understood.